This right here is supposed to be Samsung's latest and greatest flagship smartphone, the S22 Ultra. But in this video, it's not allowed to be that though, because for the entirety of this video, we're going to be seeing how good this device is and how well it does strictly and only as Samsung's latest and greatest flagship camera.
We're going to talk about everything. Well, not everything, because we're going to be focused on videos, not photos. So that means we're going to talk about low light video, from what Samsung says things are like to what things are actually like in the real world. You see what I'm talking about. We're also going to talk low light photos, just for some context, to good lighting situations and high dynamic range. We're of course going to talk about the camera's versatility, from the telephoto to the wide, all the way to the ultra wide, aka the macro camera. We'll see how all the cameras handle color, autofocus, slow motion, portraits, all the other shooting modes, to the extra features, the accessories that can take the cameras to the next level, and even to how well the camera performs in social media apps. Basically, after watching this video, you're going to know how the latest and up-to-date version of the S22 Ultra performs as a video camera. But you already knew that. You clicked on this video for that purpose. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get started. What I think is the most crazy and appealing spec to me on paper, the thing that the S22 Ultra does that no other phone, well, except Samsung phones, but basically no other phone does. I'm talking the fact that it can shoot 8K video. Right now, you're looking at 8K 24 frames per second footage from the S22 Ultra. Now, you can only watch it at up to 4K resolution though, because that's what I uploaded this video in. I also filmed most of this video in 30 frames per second, so the fact that it's in 24 frames per second might make it look a little more stuttery than normal. Still though, Samsung doesn't let you record 8K in anything other than 24 frames per second. And you can't record 24 frames per second with any other mode except if you're shooting manually. So yeah, long story short though, just like with previous years, the 8K you get from the S22 Ultra is just not that good. First, it feels like the phone can barely handle it. I've used several S22 Ultras now over time, and I've gone to updates that have fixed it and improved a lot of the performance problems that the phone had at the beginning. But when shooting 8K, the phone still gets hot and it might lag a bit, and it might even affect the footage as well, which is unacceptable, but it does happen a lot less than before. What ultimately makes 8K on the S22 just meh for me though, is that it just isn't worth it, it seems like. The image is just not that good, like I said. Remember, we're reviewing this device as an actual camera. That means I can compare this against any other camera in the world. So I should be able to put the S22 Ultra's 8K footage right up against 8K footage from something like the Canon R5. Now, would that be unfair? Maybe even outrageous? Yeah, maybe. But even if I compare the 8K from the S22 Ultra to the 6K from the Blackmagic Pocket 6K camera, you see that there's a pretty noticeable difference in just image quality alone. Now, the Blackmagic Pocket 6K is a great camera, so I'm not surprised. But I'm just trying to show some context here that might be deceiving when you look just at a spec sheet. Even putting up the S22 Ultra's 8K versus its 4K video, the main thing I really noticed, first of all, that's different is that there's no crop like there is with the 8K. And it's also much smoother footage as well. Not just the footage actually, but the experience of actually shooting it. I get no performance issues whenever I'm shooting 4K, and it's just a smooth experience. Basically, long story short, even though the S22 Ultra can shoot 8K on paper, and this is like the third year of Samsung phones being able to do so, shooting 8K on this phone is not really much of a viable option. Actually, no, I mean, it is sharper than normal, and it's actually noticeably better than the 4K when it does work and you're in good lighting and everything, and it doesn't stutter or have any performance issues at all. But in the real world, I just don't think it's much of a viable option. Now, since just about every other phone out there can't do this though, we still have to count this as a plus for the S22 Ultra. I'm sure someone somewhere is going to find a use for this that's not useless, I guess. But this is just not as big of a plus as it would be if the image actually looked amazing and it worked perfectly. So yeah, that's about it for the 8K video specifically. So now let's talk about the main thing that's important here. I'm talking image quality overall. And since 8K isn't so viable, like I said, what we're mainly looking at are the 4K shooting modes with all cameras. And long story short, the image quality you get with the S22 Ultra is, well, what do you think? You can see how things look for yourself. So that means you can feel free to ignore everything I say when it comes to image quality, because I'm just telling you what I see with my own eyes, okay? And you have eyes of your own, so you should trust them. Pay attention to everything, detail, color, skin tones, everything, okay? Now, as far as what my eyes see, well, the 4K image quality you get with the S22 Ultra is one of the best in the world as far as smartphones go. But it's just fine overall when you compare it to like all cameras everywhere, you know? I'll say I can easily see the difference between almost any mirrorless camera and the S22 Ultra. And that's something I can say about just about every phone out there, except maybe the latest iPhones when recording in 4K. This applies to other modes as well though, like slow motion, which is 120 frames per second and 1080p. The same thing from a proper camera, looks much better. And super slow-mo, I think, looks so bad it's basically unusable. just like before in my opinion. Now what I was actually kind of impressed by with the S22 Ultra though is its dynamic range. Everything in this video is shot in auto mode, well except the manual part, which we'll talk about later. But if you shoot videos professionally, you probably set your own exposure like I do when I shoot with a Blackmagic 6K camera. Oh, and I shoot in RAW by the way, of course, as you shoot with these kind of cameras. I shoot in RAW and then I color grade the footage later. And this is what 13 stops of dynamic range on a proper-ish cinema camera looks like. And when you compare it to the S22 Ultra, completely in auto mode with no help, things look pretty good actually, a lot better than I thought. It's pretty impressive. Now, it's not always consistently this good though. I think it must be using like software to help, and that's why some situations are harder for it than others. But overall, apart from the harshest of harshest situations, the dynamic range of the S22 Ultra is pretty good for a phone. And in photo mode, it's very, very good for a camera in general. So that's good. And if you really want to, you can even take your dynamic range to the next level with some accessories like the Sandmark ND filters I have right here. Now Sandmark sent these to me a long time ago, and these are actually specifically made for the iPhone 13 Pro. But funny story, I kind of lost my iPhone 13 Pro Max when I was in Austin a little bit ago on a boating ride with some friends. Actually, I didn't lose it technically because I know exactly where I kept it. Actually, I don't know anymore though because Find My iPhone stopped responding. But whatever, you know, it is what it is at this point. You think that would Find My iPhone, the fact that the iPhone's waterproof, has 5G, and you can even make it make a sound remotely, you think with all of that, it'd basically be unlosable. But at the end of the day, a phone only has so much battery. The device I'll say I have that is the closest to unlosable is actually not a device at all. It's actually, coincidentally, the sponsor of this video today, and it's actually in my pocket right now. This is the Extra Wallet, and this is the Extra Wallet Tracker. With this combo, you basically have everything you get with Find My iPhone. Tracking, playing a sound from the wallet to help you find it, but it also does some extra stuff as well. Like you press this button twice to help your wallet find your phone, you know, or your tablet or device. And the thing it has that makes it more unlosable compared to the iPhone or just any other phone out there is the fact that the inbuilt battery in the tracker will last forever. Well, not technically, but basically, because it has solar charging and 3 hours of charge will give you 2 months of use. If my iPhone was like this, maybe it'll be with me today, you know? And if that was the case, I'll probably have dropped those videos I was working on. And man, y'all would have seen all the great footage I was getting in the water, and that time that Eddie fell down, you know? Oh, and then one thing that Caesar did. Oh my gosh, Caesar. Man, it was gonna be a great video. Some would say my best. Actually, some were saying it was my best, actually. And when Selena Gomez just came in and started... Oh man, you just had to be there. You just had to be there, man. Or at least seen the footage, you know? If only I had the Extra Wallet by then maybe. Oh well, use my code in the description if you like a discount when you buy your own Extra Wallet, or just use the code OBELLEY at checkout when you're checking out on the Extra's website. And thanks again Extra for sponsoring this video. Okay, now back to what we were talking about before, and that is the S22 Ultra's image quality. Now, something I didn't think was so good video quality wise in my last video about the S22 Ultra is portrait mode video. I basically referred to it as a gimmick, just like Apple cinematic mode. But now, my opinion has changed, well slightly at least. It still only shoots 1080p, and I still wouldn't use it for anything actually professional, but it's pretty good at detecting edges and separating you from the background, even if not the best lighting. Well, it's pretty good for the most part. Sometimes it makes some obvious mistakes, and it's a bit deceptive because you can't really see it when you're shooting, you know? There's the final footage where you really see the mistakes and they really pop. But still though, when it works, it works. And yeah, even though you probably can definitely tell the difference between this and videos from an actual camera with low aperture, for stuff like Instagram and just social media in general, I think this gives your videos an extra touch of coolness that I don't think the average person will see as unprofessional right off the bat. Also, there are different variations of the portrait effect you can use, and honestly, don't listen to me, just listen to your eyes, okay? I wouldn't use this professionally, of course, but damn, some of these just look pretty cool to me, and honestly, I'm pretty confident they'll look even cooler to the average non-techie Instagram content consumer. And if you're thinking right now that, damn, Paul's right, that does look pretty cool, well then, that's you, okay? You're the average content consumer, okay? No offense. But yeah, long story short, when it comes to image quality, as far as smartphones go, the S22 Ultra is top 3, probably number 2 after the iPhone. But at the same time, image quality isn't what I'll say is the S22 Ultra's main strength per se. I think its real strength lies in just how versatile it is. The setup you get with the S22 Ultra is equivalent to having a camera with 4 different lenses of similar quality. Well, 5 even, if you add the front-facing camera. The widest camera has an f2.2 aperture with a 13mm equivalent focal length at 12 megapixels. The main 1x camera has an f1.8 aperture with a 23mm equivalent focal length, 108 megapixels technically on paper. Now, that's crazy to hear, but honestly, that's not really a big deal when it comes to video. I mean, you've already seen, and right now you're looking at the 4K footage you can capture, and it's not like 10 times more detailed than phones with 12 megapixel cameras, right? I'd say the 108 megapixels is more relevant when it comes to photography, and even then, not really. But anyways, that's besides the point of this video, so let's move on, okay? The 3x camera is at f2.4 aperture with a 69mm equivalent focal length. It has 10 megapixels. And finally, the 10x camera is at a weird f4.9 aperture with a crazy 230mm equivalent focal length with 10 megapixels as well. And with this setup, you can capture all sorts of shots. I mean, it's like a whole setup, you know? Like it's equivalent to basically buying a whole camera body and then buying an f2.2 13mm lens and then buying an f1.8 22mm lens and then going ahead to buy an f2.4 69mm lens and then deciding that's still not enough, right? I'm buying an f4.9 230mm lens. I don't even have lenses to cover all those focal length ranges, you know? And this is like my job.
And technically, we're not even done with the analogy. So we still have to add this f2.2 40 megapixel, yes, 40 megapixel front-facing camera, as well as this display monitor that you get too.
Now, to keep with the analogy though, this display monitor isn't a tilty one like I prefer from an actual camera. But quality-wise, this is probably just about the best and brightest display monitor in the world, right? Also, did I mention that this entire camera setup is water and dust resistant, so it's weather sealed? Yeah, I'm sure you get my point by now. The S22 Ultra has a very, very versatile camera setup, and it should be good for almost every single scenario.
Now, since we're here though, we haven't really talked about the selfie camera specifically too much, and this is actually a very, very important camera. Why? Well, because if you want to, this is probably the camera you're going to be using to vlog. And vlogging is kind of a thing these days. In fact, people buy cameras specifically just for vlogging, for YouTube or whatever, you know? So how does the S22 Ultra do when it comes to vlogging with a front-facing camera? Well, I think it does a great job actually. And this might actually be one of the best phones you can use for vlogging for two reasons. Now, one of those reasons is not image quality. Even though the image quality is pretty good, and I'm shooting in 4K 60 right now, it's good you can do that and everything. And it's not also autofocus or stabilization. Also, yeah, dynamic range. It's not quite the best, and I have an ND here again, and we can try to see if it makes it better right here. And you know, I think it does make it better, but just in the highlights though. As the shadows, I'm really worried about looking at the shadows right now. It's not great, but yeah, like I said, it's not because of image quality. I'm saying that this could be very, very, very good. One of the best phones out there for vlogging. And I'm not talking about what you can see on your screen, but I'm talking about what you can hear from your screen. What I'm talking about is the microphones. Or are the microphones actually. I brought it out today and it's raining and there's a lot of noise around me because every time I record something with the S22 Ultra, I'm very impressed with how it sounds. So today I want to really push it and test it out. So you're hearing, everything you're hearing right now is coming from the S22 Ultra's microphones. And I think they do a very, very good job. Like studio quality, basically, honestly, that's what I think. I can't hear it right now though, but you can hear it and you can let me know if you think it's pretty good or it's not good or whatever. Like right now, I'm literally next to a fountain. Like it's literally here right now, and well, I can't hear it, so this is not a good thing to do. It's probably not the best audio, but you can hear it for yourself. And I'm just gonna put this in there because I won't be surprised if it still sounds very, very good. The S22 Ultra has great microphones. But now, the second thing that I think is exceptional about the S22 Ultra when it comes to something like vlogging that is specific to the S22 Ultra, because many other phones actually have pretty good microphones these days. What I'm talking about is not the normal things I might talk about if I'm talking about the actual camera. Because an actual camera, I'll talk about autofocus and some other things, and we might talk about that later. But what I'm talking about specifically, that's specific to the S22 Ultra, like I said, is this. The S22 Ultra's S Pen. With this bad boy right here, you can just set up your S22 Ultra, get the shot right and everything, and just press this button, and you'll be recording without having to even touch the camera at all. Now, this is actually very great for stuff like pictures, even more so than video in my opinion, because you could just like press record and step back and just do what you want to do. But honestly, this has been really great and I've been using it a lot today. This is actually a great thing. No other phone can do this basically. So that's why I feel the S22 Ultra is very unique in this aspect. And it's just one of the most versatile cameras to have, honestly. So yeah, that's about it when it comes to vlogging specifically, the front-facing camera. But something else that the front-facing camera is important for, and something that basically all of us use today, is social media.
Now with social media apps, specifically the camera and social media apps, well, actually the S22 Ultra looks pretty good. Like the image quality you get here is better than what you get with most, like 90% Android phones, I'll say. Sometimes it even looks better than what you get with iPhones, to my eyes. In good lighting at least. As soon as the lighting isn't great though, things get, well, not the best. Long story short, I feel like I still can't trust the S22 Ultra completely with social media apps. The image quality and dynamic range is just inconsistent in my opinion. Sometimes it can match the actual camera, I mean what you get with the actual camera app, but many other times it just won't. And I know it's not Samsung's fault, but that doesn't change anything in the real world. It just is what it is. Now, the main thing I don't like though, that you might not even notice, is the choppiness. Things are just not as smooth as they are with an iPhone or with other parts of the S22 Ultra experience. Like when you want to turn the camera around when recording, it just takes 2 touches too long, and the frame rate isn't always steady per se. And the filters or effects can honestly work pretty well, but not all the time. And even when it's at its best, it's still a touch under my non-tech friends' iPhones. And honestly, that's the main thing. Long story short, I just feel like whatever I post on social media, or rather through social media with the S22 Ultra, if it's not in great quality lighting, my iPhone friends, even though they know nothing about tech, it's not that hard for them to see that something about my content is just lower quality than theirs. And I just don't like that. Like, who do they think they are, you know? If you want to use the S22 Ultra for social media, I think you should record what you want in the camera app first and then bring it into the social media app you want to use for the best quality. Unless the footage I've shown you looks good enough to you. And if that's the case, like I said, trust your eyes, don't trust me, okay? I'm just using my eyes at the end of the day. Now, speaking of the end of the day though, some of you may call that nighttime or evening, and it doesn't matter what you call it. The question is, how good are the S22 Ultra's cameras in those scenarios? See, if you ask Samsung, they'll tell you that the S22 Ultra can basically record almost daytime videos in the lowest of lowest lighting conditions with no noise, it looks like, right? So the question is this true? Well, no. Not like Samsung's ad says it's supposed to be, at least.
Right now, I am in an extreme low light situation, but I'm right next to a pretty bright light, okay? Now, if I walk away from those bright lights over there, well,
it's not quite the exaggerated turning nighttime into daytime camera that Samsung kind of said it is, you know? Now, I'm recording this specific part right here with auto FPS turned on, which is supposed to mess with your frame rate and basically reduce it when it needs to make things brighter, but I don't really like this feature, and we'll talk about it later, but I have it on right now just to see the heights of the S22 Ultra when it comes to low light. And the footage isn't too bad or anything, but compared to an actual camera, not even full frame, you can see a good amount of difference. Long story short, in my opinion, the S22 Ultra isn't impressive when it comes to low light video. It's just pretty good for a phone. But with that auto FPS thing and everything, I feel like it's just trying to overextend itself with software, and it doesn't really work. Where it really shines in low light, even in the most extreme low light situations, is with photos. The photos you get with the S22 Ultra in the same scenarios where you're getting close to unusable video footage can look like almost daytime shots. They're bright, clean, and sharp, even in portrait mode. But video-wise though, it's not the best. So yeah, that's about that when it comes to low light videography and some photography, I guess. But now, let's talk about the category the S22 Ultra is best at, or at least has the most at. I'm talking its camera extra features. I can't think of a phone that gives you more extra features than Samsung flagships. I'm talking in general, but specifically for this video, I'm talking camera-wise. Apart from the extra features we see on most phones like hyperlapse or time-lapse, night mode, panorama, slow motion, we also have super slow-mo at 960 frames per second. It's at 720p though, and you can only record for like a split second, and it's basically the same as before. We have director's cut, which records with both one of the back cameras and with the selfie camera too. And with the new update, you can now choose to save both videos individually, and that's pretty cool. It only records it up to 1080p though. We've already talked about portrait video, and it's cool, not cool when it's not working the best though, but it's cool and nice enough to catch the average person's attention for the most part. Now, we also have 8K video, like we've talked about before, and not many phones can shoot that, so I would call it an extra feature, although you already know why I don't and won't be using it, you know? You might want to though. I don't know why you'd use food mode though, but it is a free country, so, you know, go crazy. Actually, these don't look bad at all, to be honest. We have single take like before, and with single take, you just set up the camera or point it at something, press the button, and when the S22 Ultra is done, you'll have a bunch of content from just that, you know, single take. Although I feel like it doesn't make the right decisions all the time though. Like I try to put it in the perfect situation for a slow motion video, and it just wouldn't give me that. Oh well. We also have the remote S Pen shooting capabilities that we talked about before. And apart from that, there's still even other ways to shoot. Like you can take selfies with a hand gesture, and I don't really care for this, but you can, I guess. This is better for video though, and with other phones that don't have the S Pen. You can also use voice commands to take a picture or a video. Cheese. And yeah, like I said,
Capture.
you get a crap ton of extra features with Samsung flagships, and the latest S22 Ultra is no
video.
different. In fact, almost all of these are partly or completely unnecessary though. They're fun, but it kind of just feels like the S22 Ultra is like a 6-year-old kid saying, yo, look at me, look at me, look at me, look what I can do, look what I can do. And then it goes ahead to do a below average cartwheel. Now, an extra feature I wouldn't say falls in this category though is Pro Mode. Specifically for this video, Pro Video Mode. This is the most amount of control you can get with any phone camera, even more control than some cameras. You can see your exposure waveform thingy, you can see the mic levels, you can pick what mic you want to use, you can set the white balance, or just see the exact white balance, it's picking on auto. Oh, speaking of auto, you can even turn off autofocus and go completely manual. I can't think of any non-Samsung phone that lets you do this natively. You can set the exposure, of course, even the shutter speed, and even the ISO. Now, something that's great about this mode as well is that with this mode and with the latest updates, you can now shoot with any and every supported frame rate. So 4K 24, 4K 30, 4K 60, it's all accessible with all cameras. Although once you start shooting, you can't switch between cameras like you can in 4K 30 auto mode. 8K is still capped at 24 frames per second as well. And it of course only works with the main 1x camera. Also, you can use the selfie camera in Pro mode. But long story short, I don't even have to tell you. In fact, I've already told you, just with this mode alone, you have the most and almost absolute control over the video you record compared to any other smartphone. The thing is though, I don't know about you, but I'm shooting this with my Blackmagic camera right now. And this camera is a manual camera, like a fully manual camera. So I'd say the exposure, the shutter speed, the white balance, everything you know. But the thing is, I can accept that from this camera because the quality, the image quality you get with it is exceptional. With the S22 Ultra, on the other hand, unless I want to do something unique or special with like the shutter speed or something, I just don't see the point of going through the hassle of using manual mode, especially when I trust the auto mode so much. To me, it's good to have Pro mode just in case, but with the exact type of camera this is, I've honestly never felt like really using it. And if I did, it was probably just for fun, you know? Not like with the S20 Ultra on release when manual focus would have been more reliable compared to the sort of broken autofocus, if you remember. But yeah, that's about it for Pro mode, and that's about it for the extra features you get with the S22 Ultra's camera. Well, you do have the emoji face sticker thingy, as well as Bixby Vision, which is supposed to help you search for basically any product just with your camera. But those are gimmicky and inconsistent, respectively, in my opinion. Now, there's some other stuff that we haven't talked about that are kind of like extra features, but they're the kind of extra features that I'll say are not just gimmicky, but are actually kind of a hindrance. Like, they're just bad, or at least not so good. So, here's the not so good stuff I'll say about the S22 Ultra's cameras. First, and the main thing that really bugged me before was the lag and the minor in-app performance issues. Now, this doesn't really bother me anymore because after all the updates, the S22 Ultra now operates a lot more smoothly and everything. And I guess the only thing that would kind of lag is 8K stuff, like when you're trying to shoot 8K video or something at the beginning, or just when the phone is very, very hot. It doesn't overheat though, except that one time I used it for a time lapse in the sun. But yeah, apart from this, the other not so good things I'll say are just the bunch of weird stuff that Samsung has on by default that I just think water down the camera experience. Like focus enhancer, for example. The S22 Ultra doesn't have focus problems in my experience, but when this is on, it just does some glitchy things at times with focus, so I just can't trust it. There's also face smoothing, which actually some people like, but I could just never get behind, you know? Especially because you can always smoothen things in post and you can't like unsmoothing things in post, you know what I mean? Also, the auto FPS thing I talked about, like, do you really want a variable frame rate? Because this doesn't even give you that much better low light performance. It just gives you stuttery footage that looks like you're trying to do long exposure, but in video mode. It's just not cool. Basically, long story short, these things are just not so good for getting the best out of the S22 Ultra's cameras. So my professional advice, turn all that shit off, okay? Cool. Now, with that being said, that's just about everything you need to know about the S22 Ultra's cameras. Now, believe it or not, there's still some things we haven't talked about, like stabilization, for example. If you're wondering, the S22 Ultra actually is very, very good at stabilization. Well, with the ultra wide lens and with the main lens and even with the 3x lens actually. But when you go to the 10x lens, yeah, the 10x lens is not very good at stabilization. Well, it's actually not that bad when you hold it still, but it does this thing where it just, you know, like, just flinches and just keeps doing something like that. So yeah, it's not the best there. But then again, how many 200 and something millimeter lenses do you know that actually are very good when it comes to image stabilization? Something else we didn't technically fully talk about is autofocus. But honestly, I wouldn't worry too much about that because the S22 Ultra, I wouldn't say has a problem with that really. It's better than most actual cameras out there, right? I think it's probably as good as the Sony cameras out there. And the Sony cameras probably have the best autofocus, if not Canon.
So in comparison, this is literally on that level. To say this has bad autofocus would be like saying it's on Panasonic's level, and that's crazy, you know? So yeah, I wouldn't worry about autofocus at all when it comes to the S22 Ultra. Now, something I would worry about though, not just with the S22 Ultra, but with any camera, any smartphone that you want to use to shoot a lot of video, especially 4K video, what I'll definitely worry about is storage. Now, I've used about 219 gigabytes of storage on my S22 Ultra so far. Wow, definitely wasted a bunch of space there. But it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it, okay? Now, with that being said, that's everything we're gonna talk about in this video. Let me know if I forgot something in the comment section below. This is a Samsung phone after all, so that's likely the case. Leave a like if you like this video, subscribe if you wanna see some more, and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.